topic is social life at school. Hypothesis: students' social lives have been impacted negatively due to lack of social activities because of COVID. My category is grade 12 students, and my prediction was students who have been socially involved in their senior year consider themselves highly affected. Here's the chart of the grade 12 students and how involved they were before COVID and how many of their friends go to Eden. The career statement: students who are in grade 12 and very involved. Here's my formula. And what I found out is 5 out of the 7 students were involved before COVID. 71% of grade 12 students were very involved with most of their friends at Eden. Of the 71%, 100% of their friends mostly go to Eden. Here's the chart of the grade 12 students. Conclusion: grade 12 students who were very involved were highly affected by COVID. 71% of students is high for students who were highly involved compared to this year. And they can't do the activities they used to, like clubs, and my prediction was correct. My second category is grade 9 students. My prediction was students who are new to high school and not yet involved consider themselves less affected by COVID. Here's the grade that they are in and how socially involved they were at Eden before COVID. And my career statement: students who are in grade 9 and not yet involved. Here's my formula. And what I found out is 5 out of the 6 grade 9s were not yet involved. 83% of grade 9s were not yet involved at Eden. Here's the chart of the grade 9 students that are not involved. And my conclusion: grade 9s were less affected socially at school because they were not yet involved. My prediction was correct because the grade 9s didn't have a chance to get involved. They were less affected because they didn't have a chance to get involved in clubs and teams. And my next category, I did all students. My prediction was all students at Eden who were socially active outside of school consider themselves less affected by COVID. Here's a chart, so if they participated in actually any sports and how often they were able to socialize with their friends during COVID, and on social media, connect with their friends, and what they did during COVID and what they're involved in. My career statement: all students who stayed socially active. Here is my formula. And what I found out is 8 out of the 21 students were able to stay socially active during COVID. 38 who participated in extracurricular activities were able to socialize a lot during COVID. Of those students, they were also stayed connected through social media. 29% of students who participated in extracurricular activities were able to socialize often during COVID. Here's a chart of all the students who stayed socially active. And my conclusion: 38% of all students remained socially active during COVID, and they often or always stayed connected through social media. And since 38% stayed socially active, the students were affected by COVID. My prediction was wrong. I thought the percent would have been higher. My next category is grade 10 to 12 students. My prediction was students in grade 10 to 12 who socialized with friends before COVID were only able to socialize sometimes during. Here's a chart and the grade that they are currently in. and if they are involved in clubs or sports at Eden, and how often they socialize um, at school with their friends before COVID, and how often they socialize with their friends outside of and during COVID. My career statement: grade 10, 11, and 12s who were socially involved and socialized with friends at school before COVID. Here's my formula. What I found out is 71% of students in grade 10 to 12 were involved in clubs before COVID. 6 of the students who socialized every day before COVID were not able to socialize as much during COVID. Here's the chart of the grade 10 to 12 students. My conclusion: students were affected negatively during COVID because they could not socialize as much as they used to. Overall, the students are limited by the amount of friends they see. It is hard to interact, and it's just different. And my prediction was correct. The students cannot socialize as much as they used to before COVID. My next category is I did all students. My prediction: all students who were socially involved before COVID were not able to socialize during COVID. Here's if they were socially involved in any clubs at school, and how often they were able to socialize with their friends outside of school during COVID, and what the activities they did to stay active. Career statement: all students who were socially involved before COVID and sometimes during COVID. Here is my formula. What I found out is 8 of the 21 students who were involved in clubs before COVID were only able to socialize sometimes during COVID. Some of these activities the students were involved with were sports teams, ski club, student council, book club, and DECA. Here's a chart of all the students that were socially involved before COVID. And 38% of the students were affected. Many of them were able to socialize during COVID. All the students are affected now because they're not active and harder to get involved. 38% of the students were able to socialize sometimes during COVID, and my prediction was wrong. There were less than half of the students were able to socialize. And my next one, I did all students, and my prediction were all students whose friends go to Eden were not able to socialize with them as much during COVID. Here are how many friends go to Eden and how often they socialize with their friends outside of school during COVID. My career statement: all students whose friends go to Eden and were not able to socialize during COVID. Here is the formula. What I found out is all the students, 10 of them have most of their friends at Eden. Out of the 10, 90% of them are able to socialize sometimes during COVID. Out of the 10 students, 43% of them have most of their friends at Eden and were only able to socialize sometimes. Here's a chart of the friends that go to Eden. And my conclusion: about half of the students were able to socialize during COVID. Overall, it has affected the number of students they have seen in a day. School is not fun anymore, harder to interact, and mostly affected sports and clubs. And my prediction was wrong. The students were able to socialize during COVID, but it still affected them during school now. So here is my chart. Out of all the students, over half of them socialize with friends at school every day. During COVID, the majority of students could only socialize sometimes. Over half of the students were socially involved in clubs before COVID. And almost 100% of the students were able to play sports or work during COVID. Overall, students' social lives have been impacted negatively due to COVID. There are no clubs, extracurricular activities to get involved in with now. But it seems like students still socialize with their friends, which is good.